Articles of impeachment have been drafted against Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, accusing him of corrupt conduct and of violating his oath of office. The 4 articles filed by Minnesota State Representative Mike Weiner allege Walz knowingly concealed widespread fraud in the state's Department of Human Services, despite repeated warnings, audits, reports, and public indicators of systematic abuse. Minnesota State Representative Drew Roach joins us now. State Rep, good to see you back on National Report. So here we are today. Remember, we're not talking about the protests that have moved to violence. We're talking about the fraud that's alleged in the state and charged in the state of that crime, of that nature. Do you support having Governor Walz removed from office?
Absolutely, no doubt about it. Mike Weiner is Representative Weiner has taken a good lead on this, and I'm signing on to this in full support of it. Tim Walz has let the state down on many ways, many fronts. He's continuing to stoke the flames in public. He's now, indoctrinating our children, calling a day of unity in schools after the ICE shooting. And using our kids as tools to perpetuate this anti-ICE movement. And, aside from that and all the fraud, he has just led the state into a deficit, and he needs to be removed immediately.
So re-election, stepping down from re-election, that is not enough for you?
Absolutely not. The voters of Minnesota are demanding accountability. Tim Walz is the face of the fraud, and he needs to be held accountable. As well as many other people, but we need to start with Tim Walz.
You mentioned the pushback on ICE, the supporting of those going out and protesting of ICE, but it's gotten to more than that. It's agitators at this point. It's those defying law. President Trump threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minneapolis specifically as dangerous protests against ICE agents ramping up throughout the streets. This after that ICE-involved shooting with an illegal Venezuelan migrant. Minnesota Congressman and Majority Whip Tom Emmer even posting this to X. Tim Walz should resign effective immediately. The safety of Minnesotans depend on it. The scenes of destruction and damage taking place in Minneapolis are abhorrent. This violence cannot be tolerated. So, but then, and Control, let's do triple B05. Then Walz puts up a direct statement saying this: I am making a direct appeal to the president. Let's turn the temperature down, stop the campaign of retribution. This is not who we are. Then he talks to Minnesotans saying, I know this is scary. We must speak out loudly, urgently, but also peacefully. We cannot fan the flames of chaos. That's what he wants. He seemingly the president of the United States. Do you think because the president mentioned the Insurrection Act, putting boots on the ground in Minneapolis and needing to do that, that now that's why you're seeing the governor call for peace?
Absolutely, but he does that, but then he doesn't, because then he still is calling for people to go out there and as observers and protest. But in reality, he's stoking the flames. He's trying to turn the temperature down now, slightly, but in reality, anything that Tim Walz can do to change the focus of Minnesotans away from fraud, he's going to continue to do. And so this is just a ruse for him. He sees that he's not winning, and that his message is not resonating with Minnesotans. So he feels like he has to put out a statement like that. Mm-hmm. But it's contradictory because every other day he's saying something different.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. We've seen, obviously, his video still calling. And the sad part, too, which is underreported, there are protesters bringing their children, their babies, out to these very dangerous areas. And that should not be. That should, if anything, you should have state lawmakers or local leaders stepping up and saying, okay, don't do that. You want to protest? Well, yeah, I understand, but this is becoming dangerous points to bring your child to. That's not smart.
Yeah, well, and as I stated earlier, the Minneapolis School District, the St. Paul, Minneapolis School District specifically, they have allowed their students to do remote learning up until February 12th. We just saw 2 days ago that St. Paul School District children were at the Capitol, being activists, and there was a brawl between kids at the Capitol. And so now we see our public school systems using children as activists and getting them emotionally charged into something that they shouldn't be involved in. These kids should be in school and learning.
Yeah.
You know, our grades are going down and down for our kids. We're ranked 39th in the country in reading, and yet we're incentivizing, some school districts are incentivizing kids to go out there and be activists against ICE. And it's simply at the hands of Tim Walz trying to indoctrinate our kids and use our kids as tools and pawns in this messaging against ICE. And it's despicable.
It really is. It really is. The messaging on the left, Minnesota Democratic Congresswoman April McLean Delaney posting about this on Thursday, about a field hearing happening right now, taking place. She says tomorrow, it's happening today, tomorrow I'm joining more than 24 colleagues in Minnesota for a field hearing. They titled it, Kidnapped and Disappeared, Trump's Deadly Assault on Minnesota. We'll hear directly from witnesses about personal trauma and constitutional violations following ICE's killing of U.S. citizen Renee Nicole Good and this administration's lawless actions nationwide. As we take you live inside of that hearing happening now. This is set up in such a formal way. You'll recognize members Ilhan Omar and Pramila Jayapal of the so-called squad. This in St. Paul, in your state, sir. Again, Trump's deadly assault on Minnesota. Kidnapped and disappeared. That's the title of this hearing. It doesn't appear as if they have any other vocal point or witness on the other side of this, on law enforcement side, or it's just one narrative, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
It's all political theater. Where were these members of Congress when we've been talking about fraud for the last 8 years in our state? They were nowhere. Mm-hmm. You know, Ilhan Omar, you know, played a hand in this. Where was she then? Except downplaying the fraud and pretending like it never happened. But now she wants to be in the spotlight and pretend like we have a problem. We have a problem because Minnesota taxpayers are sick and tired of their taxpayer dollars being stolen from them. You know, and again, it's this political rhetoric that the left is using to change the subject about fraud it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and what a waste of taxpayer money to create I mean, it's not just a microphone and they're all outside. This is very well set up, and I imagine travel, expenses, those are all in account as well, and it's not about fraud. The billions of dollars in fraud. It's about ICE. Minnesota State Representative Drew Roach joining us. State Rep, good to see you. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.